forest, but I hang out in the urban forest quite a bit. Where there's sidewalks and things.
Civilized forest.
The civilized forest. I've come here today to talk to you about the park is a lot of natural areas and landscaped areas. Landscape meaning the trees were planted. And I just want to talk about the differences between the two. And Homesteadian Design Park, right? Like the same as Central Park in New York City. That's the namesake that this park is named after. And what that means is that there were what you see, the ponds, the natural areas, the sidewalks meandering through, the roads meandering through the park. It's a very specific design that the Olmstedian way is. I believe this was created by someone that worked for Frederick Olmsted.
Is that right?
Yep. And so it was a firm that like broke off of that main landscape architecture firm. And just imagine the amount of public support and resources that were necessary to make this all happen. I mean, this is a big park, and all of the Olmstedian parks are big parks. We have Washington Park in Albany. You walk through and you kind of get the same feel. It's, you know, you've got the same type of design. And it's just amazing to me. I'm also on the board of trustees for the Historical Society of the town I live in. So I'm always looking at things from a historical perspective, and just when I see things like this, it just amazes me that people who are in the community were able to come together, make the funds happen, and make this available to everyone in the community. So they're really treasures. Every park is, but these big parks sure are.
Especially with the natural areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit today.
How many acres is this park?
I have no idea.
No idea?
Yeah.
I should have brought my pamphlet. I didn't think so.
Yeah. So I brought all of these. I call them my swag bag. Brought my swag bag and my little table, and I have things like this is the pamphlet on the urban and community forestry program, and Sarah, this is your segue into talking about what we're doing on the 17th.
Oh, okay. I'll take two segues. On the park, probably everybody here knows, but I'll just mention it again. We call it SEEK, which stands for the Schenectady Environmental Education Center, and some people refer to it as the old casino building, that abandoned brick building. I'm probably preaching to the choir. Does everybody know about this project already? Actually, we have a meeting tonight with the partners. There's 5 partners, including ECOS, that are really rallying to convert this into an environmental education center.
Tell them how it's funded.
Well, it's funded by multiple means. It belongs to the city, and the city has budgeted in the past, I forget how many 100,000. I'm not the one that keeps track of the finances like Tom Carey, but I believe we are like 300,000 short of the estimated 1.2 million that it takes to convert this building. And like you said, it's amazing. Things that look so simple, how much there is to it when you get into the roofs. And this building is going to be net zero, so it's going to have solar panels, and it's going to, celebrate all the systems that we use, whether it's sewage, water, things like that, to show people. It's going to be besides the solar panels, be very environmentally friendly, green, the way it's built, all that kind of stuff too. So just so everybody's aware of that, put pressure on the city to keep budgeting that in their budget. And other state senator or state representative, Santa Barbara, got like 500,000 for it. We've, as one of the partners, one of our expenses is moving our office after it's complete to this building. And we've gotten very generous donations from our members that is earmarked just for that. A church also has donated, so we have all these different forms, and some of the partners are really good at writing grants. And of course, a big part of it is the programming. The building's not, worth that much if you don't have the vibrant programming. And we're trying. It's all about environmental justice, and we're trying to reach every segment here in Central Park that sometimes ECOS doesn't always reach. So that was my first segue. The second one was Amy is going to be our speaker on Zoom. The more the merrier. And I convince people, I bribe them. You can even turn your video off, have your dinner, kick your feet off. But please join us on October 17th at 7 o'clock. Find a friend that Zooms if you don't. Come to our house, Pete, if you don't Zoom. And I'm sure she'll give a fascinating presentation about relief.
Yep. So part of that presentation, it's not going to be me giving it because I'm going to be in Queens, in New York City that day. So it's unpredictable when I'll be able to get back and sit at my computer to give a presentation. But my colleague Christina McLaughlin is the Relief Partnership Coordinator. So I shouldn't say just relief. She's the Urban Forestry Programs Partnership Coordinator. When you're talking about all the different groups that it takes to make all of this happen, she's the conduit to get them all together statewide, though. So the Urban and Community Forestry Program at the DEC, we help municipalities, nonprofits, just take care of the trees that they own. So there's a lot of best management practices that people aren't aware of. You know, the trees just grow out on their own, right? But in an urban area, or I should say, we define urban, or I define urban as if a tree falls and it's likely someone's going to hear it, that's an urban tree. So even if you don't think of your home as in an urban area, you live there, you're going to hear that tree fall. It's an urban tree. So just to make that clear, urban is like the Latin for people, right? So yeah, we have a lot of resources, which Schenectady has been lucky to receive. I guess in the cemetery, help me. Vale Cemetery is classified as an arboretum now, and they applied and received a grant to have funding for a total 100% tree inventory in the cemetery. So that means that they're collecting information such as the species, size, the condition, how the tree's doing, management recommendations. You know, like this tree needs to be removed, or this tree needs to be pruned, or this tree needs to be fertilized, aerated, something like that. And then they'll also get they have the funding to have a management plan written, which will be just a book that we hope that the managers of the cemetery trees will take advice from, and they can also receive funding next time around after that book is finished to receive money to implement all the management recommendations that were written in that management plan. So we hope that works out. And then the city of Schenectady has already been through the management plan and inventory. They have that in place. Now they receive money for the implementation part. So I think it was like $100,000 or something. So that means that contractors are going to come in and do the work that was written in the management plan.
We hope.
We hope.
I just got an email from Betsy this morning that was not sanguine about what was going on there. That nothing seemed to be happening.
It's happening.
It is?
Okay, this is the issue. It's an administrative issue. They changed from one way of dealing with the grants to another way. So there's like a learning curve for everybody to learn how to do it in the new way. So it's slowing. And then plus we have that. This is a good segue into the U.S. Forest Service. This is a generational type of investment into urban forestry. I can't remember, it was over $10 billion, over the whole country, of which New York received the second most after California. And we were responsible for divvying up about 12 million of that. So that was just another grant that was thrown into the whole, we had enough people to deal with the grants that we normally give out, and then you throw in this extra 12 million, and the administration has been tough. Yes. But Schenectady's definitely getting that implementation money. This brochure explains everything we do and everything that we're going to talk about on the 17th, including relief. We have the Capital Region Relief Committee. It's RELEAF. And Steve's a part of that committee. And we meet once every 2 months or so just to talk about different projects. Like, I asked Steve, well, I went on a terrible tree walk this past summer, and I've only been at this for a little over a year now. Before that, I was an arborist, so I've been doing tree stuff since my 20s. And I started it as a forester a little over a year ago, and I asked Steve after I went on a terrible tree walk that was led by another arborist, and my biggest pet peeve about it was he would walk and then talk about the trees with everybody behind him.
Right.
So stop. If I do that today, please let me know. But I asked Steve and my relief committee people if he had an opportunity for me to hone my tree walk skills, and here we are. So please let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, I've been an arborist for 20 years, a certified arborist. That means I met the criteria to be admitted into the certified arborist test given by the International Society of Arboriculture, and I passed the test, and I've been a certified arborist ever since. I have to get continuing education credits every year and submit them to maintain my certification along with a check. But that's how it goes. I worked for a tree company for a long time, and I was very lucky to work on a contract we had with the United States Military Academy at West Point, and I had a mentor that couldn't be beat. and just having the opportunity to look at the same trees, care for the same trees over 6 years' time, I could go back and see what I did, what work I did on the tree, how it responded to that. So I feel like I had a unique arborist opportunity there. I guess we can go on. I don't know. I got to talk about the National Arbor Day Foundation. I'm sure you've seen the Tree City signs outside of Schenectady and other municipalities around here. When you drive in on the main road, you'll see this sign that says Tree City USA for 10 years or however many years. Well, Tree City is a good way for a municipality to get into an urban forestry program. So it helps them realize that they need to manage their trees. It's just another part of the infrastructure, just like the sidewalks, the roads, the lampposts, the street lights. They need to manage the trees. They don't just manage themselves. That's the problem. They a lot of times seem like they do, but that's not the case. A tree could be a liability. They have a lifespan just like all of us. And just like us, we have to manage our own health. I would say it's a lot less work than managing our own health, but here we go.
The Arbor Day Foundation is the organization that has kind of spearheaded that.
Yeah, the Arbor Day Foundation is the administrator of that Tree City USA program in conjunction with all of the state environmental conservation organizations. So when a tree, like when Betsy, or I think she's handed it off, Betsy Henry usually submits the application, but I think someone else from Schenectady is doing it now. It comes to us and we review it and make sure they met all of the standards for that year, which are pretty easy. You have to have a tree ordinance. So that means a law that says that we're going to take care of the trees, following the best management practices. We're going to have a law that says you can't violate the trees anyway. You can't hang signs off of them. You can't pour gasoline on the roots. That type of thing. Like there's a punishment for it, a fine or something. They have to have an Arbor Day celebration every year. The mayor has to have write a proclamation for Arbor Day every year, which we were at this year at Vale Cemetery. And they have to spend at least $2 per capita on their urban forestry program, which sounds like a big hill to climb, but it really isn't if you count like picking up the leaves and picking up the brush and things. I mean, that's an expensive task in itself, and it's part of the urban forestry program. So
Will this be here when we come back from our walk?
Sure.
What's that?
sure.
Okay, yeah, I'll grab it when we come back.
Unless the wind picks up.
Oh, okay.
And I actually want to talk about that tree first. Does anyone know what that one is? Yep, Eastern Cottonwood. Okay, so sometimes trees grow where they want to grow, and maybe it's not the best place for them to grow. Having a cottonwood over a parking lot, if this was a busier parking lot, would be disastrous because they just drop branches. That's part of their character. They're pioneer species, which means they're the first ones to come in where an area is suddenly sunny. Like maybe there was a storm that blew through and all the trees fell down, but this is on the edge of a parking lot, that's why it's sunny. And that they're the first to grow. You can see they grow fast. That's probably only 50 years old, or not even.
Wow.
And they have the little, the white seeds that blow around in the wind in the spring, in May.
Their life expectancy normally.
That's the thing, life expectancy, especially on a tree that's on an edge of a parking lot, so that all of the parking lot surface is very compacted, right?
Yeah.
You can't dig in it. So imagine trying to get roots in there.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. It's leaning this way, so that's not a good sign. But all of its strong roots we know are behind it, so
Right.
that's a point in its favor. Yeah, they generally just, even in the wild, don't live that long because they are pinier species. They're
Okay.
adapted
We
to
have a
growing
huge
fast.
one that's probably not ideal, but yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's well, I always say that they're
But it's still
a great
taking
tree
away
to
from
have on the
our
back
shed.
40.
Yeah.
You know, they're tall, they give a lot of shade, they're, a lot of habitat for wildlife, you know.
Don't they tend to prefer wetter areas?
And and this is not a wet area.
That's
So
not-
like I
okay.
said, when
Of course, there's a stream on the other side.
yeah, it's over there.
It's over there, yeah.
But
Ours
they
is
get
not,
runoff from that
Yeah.
little ridge there.
Yeah.
Yes,
I don't know about it. Okay, so you want to talk about runoff from that ridge. What's growing on that ridge? Norway maples. Norway maples are an invasive species from Europe, and they were purposely brought over here. And I just know all the history of the trees because I'm such a history buff. But they were brought over here on purpose for ornamental purposes in the late 18th century. So they've been here a long time. And they're still being sold in nurseries, even though that boggles my mind, but I'm not allowed to talk about that because I work for the organization that creates the list of species they're not allowed to sell in nurseries. So if they say it's okay, I'm supposed to say it's okay. I think it's because they are so ubiquitous that they're just everywhere. It's kind of like they've given up. I mean, no matter if you stop planting them in your yards, they're going to get around anyway. But
Yeah.
the problem with Norway maples, well, one of the problems is, other than displacing our native maples, is the leaves are so big and blocky that they literally catch the rainfall. Like we want trees for stormwater control, but they're taking it to the next level. They're catching all the rain. So the trees beneath them aren't getting it as much as they would. Like you could go under a Norway maple in a rainstorm and stay perfectly dry. So maybe it's not getting the moisture from the water coming down the ridge because of all those Norway maples. Now all those pines in there, I believe, were planted when the park was being built for the first time. Now the Olmstedian way is to kind of work with the natural landscape rather than, go in there and bulldoze everything down. And remember, they were working in the 19th century. so they didn't really have bulldozers, so they kind of had to work with the natural topography. So I believe all those trees were planted at some point, either when the park was first in existence or later on. But I believe it was a plantation.
Are those all, are they white pines?
They're eastern white pines. Yep, Pinus strobus.
So they're
And I'm not going to say Latin names that I'm not sure of because you guys have the books.
And the names keep changing.
This area anyway, it's not.
Oh,
that big.
sure, yeah. Yeah, the white pines. But again, white pines aren't great to have next to a parking lot, or they're also a back 40 kind of tree because they lose. That's their natural adaptation to snowstorms and wind events is just to drop branches. They just naturally shed their branches to make it easier for them to get through the whatever event is happening. And next to a house, next to a parking lot, a driveway, maybe not such a good idea. But they are beautiful, and they provide a lot of habitat for wildlife, and of course human uses. They use white pine for lumber and flooring and you name it, cabinets, if you're into that look.
Ship masts.
Well-
ship masts.
Yes, thank you.
Historian.
The historical note on white pines is when the king's people went walking through the woods. They had signs that they would post on. White pines back in the 18th century. I mean, we're talking California size, over 100 feet tall. Yeah. So, and that's another note to that, yeah, everything we're looking at is a second regrowth of forest. This was all cleared during colonial times for agriculture. You name it, they did it. But it was all cleared. If it's on flat land. There's places in the Adirondacks where it was too hilly to bother with, that it's still old growth. And they're still finding them, the old growth forests. Like, we don't even know all of the old growth that exists in New York State. That just boggles my mind. People still find them. So these trees, even though they look big, these white pines, they're tiny compared to what they were. And they were marked with the king's men marked them as property of the royal crown to be used as ship masts for the Navy. So no matter you own the land or who owned the land, Native Americans owned the land, it was their tree. So that was part of the protest why we sought independence. So just one more thing added to the list, really. So I guess we'll take this bridge and we'll walk over to the other side and we'll get into the more landscape trees.
I'm gonna grab my coat real quick. I'll be right back.
No.
Steve asked me to talk about elm trees. So this is, just an American elm. The poor elm trees, they grow in wetlands like you see here. They are and they were massive street trees up until the 30s or 40s when the Dutch elm disease came in. The Dutch elm disease came from Holland. I think it was brought here on specimens that were from Holland, the Holland elm tree, and it's a fungus, and it uses a beetle, I can't remember the name of the beetle, as the vector to get it around, so the little spores of the fungus are on the beetle's feet, and the beetle's just doing what it does on elm trees and spreads the fungus to the elm tree. So they grow generally now I call them, they grow big enough to be expensive to cut down before they die. So you can still see some. There's still monsters around, but you start seeing the leaves up top, the branches start dying back. They call it flagging. So it's one little part of the canopy that starts dying back, and then another part, and then you eventually lose the whole tree.
The park must have had plenty of them because there are a lot of these shrub-sized elms around, which surprised me when I came here. I thought we don't have elms anymore.
Yeah.
No, we just don't have elms that grow up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the American chestnut tree. The same kind of story. A blight was released on them, which was also purposely brought here. Well, not purposely brought. A botanist at the New York Botanical Garden had gone to China for a botany trip and brought back a Chinese chestnut that had the fungus on it. Now in China, bless you. In China, the chestnut trees are adapted to that fungus, and there are other checks and balances that keep it from getting out of control. I'm sure a few trees a year die from the fungus there, but here it just went rampant. And again, chestnut trees, even in the 1930s and 40s, were this big around. I mean, California-sized trees here. They grew fast. They had characteristics for lumber just like oak does. They were used for the same types of. It was very hard wood. It was great for joists
Very
and
beautiful.
beams, and yeah, people built doors out of them because you could cut a whole door out of one tree. You didn't have to do planks and glue them together. You just do one big heavy door, like I think of it like a castle door. Yeah, so all the chestnut trees, and you can imagine the chestnuts, the nuts themselves were a very important food source for people and of course animals. And just a factoid that I love about chestnuts is when you're walking through the woods and you see a hummock, a hill like this in the ground, you're like, how'd that get there? That's a chestnut tree that fell down 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And it just, it decayed, of course, but it took a long time because it was so big, and as it decayed, it just collected detritus around it, and now it has a permanent hummock in the soil.
Oh, I got a question for you. You see this out in, especially the Adirondacks if you're hiking. There'll be a tree on top of a cliff. And the cliff might be this high, and the ground's down there. Yet there's a big root going down from that tree. How did that happen?
Like I was saying with the cottonwood, seeds fall where they fall, and if conditions are right for the seed to germinate, it germinates. It isn't until somewhere later down the road in its life when it's affected by the lack of resources available to it. So you could say, an oak tree could live to 200, 300 years old, right? But if it doesn't have the right resources, it's not. So they are adapted to finding those resources. A tree can't move around and look for what it needs. So when it's growing in a rock, I'm sure there's a crack underneath that rock, or underneath that root. And the roots are extracting what they need out of that crack.
I've never it looks like a flat surface on the rock face.
Or that could just be it's getting its resources off the back of the rock.
So it would have had to extend a small root down 5 feet basically drop it in the air.
That totally can happen. I'm sure you've seen it before.
You never see a young tree do that.
Well, it was young at some point.
Yeah. Well, it just occurred to me some of these trees that are growing in the rocks, they are probably more stable than others because when the wind comes, that root's not going to come up. It's just going to stay there. Whereas if it's in dirt, it can go
Or
right
not.
over. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they go through. They're very resilient and then delicate at the same time. Like there were probably 50 seeds that tried to grow up around it, and that was the only successful one.
Natural selection.
Yep. If it just did the right things at the right times, then
Had the right properties.
yep, that's what made it. Well, when I came here to do the recon for this walk, the jewelweed in the stream was in flower. It's not anymore.
Not for a while now.
In seed now.
Yeah.
The jewel weed, I just love how, well, it's beautiful. It's a member of the impatiens family. So it has those yellow gold flowers. And I'm sure if we walk by it now, if you touch one, the seed springs out. Like literally it's curled up and then it springs out just from
That's why it's
animals
also
walking
called
by.
touch me not.
Yeah, touch me not. And it often grows, this is a good trivia fact, it often grows next to poison ivy, and it is the natural cure for poison ivy. They itch from poison ivy. You take a jewelweed stem and just rub it on the poison ivy and you feel better instantly. And I love on this side we have actual cattails growing, not the invasive Asian Phragmites grass. So cattails are grass, but they're native, and I love seeing them. My daughter says they look like corn dogs. This here is mugwort.
Oh yes, mugwort.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. It's from, I think, like Siberia, that side of Europe anyway. It's in the chrysanthemum family, and it mostly propagates by its roots. So if you were to dig up the soil from here, take it somewhere else, even though maybe you don't have any of the tops on it, you still have fragments of the roots in the soil, and then all of a sudden you have a mugwort patch where you brought the soil. And that's probably how most of the mugwort got started. The seeds themselves aren't all that viable here, but I've definitely seen evidence where the only way that it got in my yard was by seed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a garden weed, so it
Yeah.
must propagate by seed.
Yep. So I mean, just the success of the seeds is very low. It's more the root fragments that's the problem. But they smell really nice. They have medicinal uses. I like the smell of chrysanthemum.
I heard that the historical use of it was embalming.
Oh, I never heard that. Yeah. Embalming.
Yeah, you gotta smell it.
Yeah.
That's a good October topic. Yeah, I can see how it would hide the smell.
Looks as though there's a little bit of evening primrose left over there.
Oh boy.
Holding on.
And is either one gone?
In flower.
Oh really? Yeah, I did know.
I'm pretty sure that, yeah, I can, even with my eyes, I can see petals. The yellow over there is just yellowing leaves.
So, your organization,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
your organization does, yeah, what does it do? This one's like, yeah, it's at risk. Have you ever heard of Gould Farm over east of right there? I just thought it was on it this morning, I was Googling. I can
Does everybody know what this guy is? It's not a tree. I'm sorry, I can't stay on one topic.
Knotweed, yeah.
This is Japanese knotweed, and it was brought here as an ornamental plant because it is kind of attractive. It's not good. It grows near wetlands usually. It also propagates by root fragments more than it does from its seed, and almost impossible to get rid of other than using chemicals, just like the mugwort. Yeah, just a constant race to get rid of that when you see it. And that's another, we need to talk to our municipal leaders about these things, because I've seen the light. I've been to the Adirondacks. I know that natural areas exist that are native and don't have or haven't been infiltrated by invasive species, and it's not as big a hill to climb as we think it is. Like getting rid of all these Norway maples might be a big hill, but these little patches of knotweed, if we took an inventory throughout the park, maybe it's one day of an herbicide technician spending the day, and all of a sudden you have no more knotweed in the park. And because it's not propagated so much by its seed, you probably won't have any if you're not transporting soil around. And practices like don't transport your soil around, that is what we need to teach all of our people that are moving the soil around.
I hope they find all the patches of it if they do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you send a person like me out in a park for a day or two, we'll find them all. Oh, Norway maple, we were talking about how it's easiest, for me, I don't know, to identify it by its bark, because if you look up to the top of it, you're like, oh, maybe it's a sugar maple. But when we finally get to a sugar maple, I'll show you how the bark is different than it is on a Norway maple. The branching structure is different. So yeah, just commit that to memory, what the bark looks like. And that's the easiest way for most people to tell what a Norway maple is, apart from
I always identify it because it's the one maple where it is wider than it is tall. You'll see some leaves on the tree where they're kind of even, but it's generally this splayed thing. Also, people tell it because of the white sap. Although when I tried to do that for kids, I almost always pick a tree that does not have white sap.
Yeah, this time of year it's tough because it isn't. If you take a leaf off when they first come out in the spring, it's just oozing out of it.
And I always add one more thing about the Norway maple. This time of year, it's so green compared to the others.
Compared
and
to the
that's
others,
an unfair advantage that a lot of these non-natives have is that this time of year it's still sucking in the, photosynthesizing, and it's one of the reasons it outcompetes.
And the disadvantage of it is, unlike the sugar maple, which it tends to replace, it just turns yellow.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen it too. We had one that turned beautiful red.
A Norway?
Norway.
Oh, it must have been one of those Crimson King Norway maples. It's always
Oh,
red.
that's right.
Yeah.
The Crimson King is actually a Norway maple. If you look at the leaves, again, it's wider than it is, and we have them over there. I think they do turn color in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that red in the summer? It was a deep, deep green.
So we have all those grapevines there. We have invasive grapevines, but we also have native grapevines, and I'm not the person to tell you the difference between the two. But they are a woody plant. It's in my purview. They grow up, they make grapes, they're good for the habitat. I'm not clear how different the invasive ones are from the native ones as far as habitat is concerned, but there is a horrible vine that's coming up here from the south in New York City area called porcelain berry. It looks very similar to grapevine, but it's not. It gets beautiful purple berries on it that look like porcelain, but it takes over anywhere that's sunny, that isn't mowed regularly. It's not good. It just kills everything underneath because it shades it out.
I came across that. I tasted a berry off what I thought was a grapevine.
I always want to talk about white oak because that's what we use to make wine barrels out of. It's crucial. I wouldn't say that this is a specimen white oak. If I was imagining a white oak in my mind, it would be as wide as it is tall. Like if you see them in an old farm field, the one that the farmer kept for the cows to get shaded under. They're just magnificent, like 100-foot wide crown. And the leaves, this isn't, okay, so white oak and red oak, it's two different groups of oaks. You can't even say family because they're in the same family, but they're two different groups of oaks. But within those two groups, we have many species. So you can always tell a white oak, or group white oak, by its rounded leaves. The lobes on the leaves are rounded rather than pointy. Well, I'm sure we'll see a red oak down the way. And they have the acorns, so very important mast species for wildlife. They, make wonderful squirrel nests. The wood is excellent for furniture and flooring and that type of thing. The fancier types of wood, not, you wouldn't use it to build the studs in the wall, but you would use it for the fancier wood that you would need for furniture and stuff like that. And yeah, they're just a sturdy landscape tree. They're great to have. I have one in my yard. I recommend it. Other than when there is a mast year, and my hill is a yard, and it kind of makes like you're walking on roller skates when you're walking through all those acorns. So you have to be careful. But the squirrels love them. Yeah, they're just an awesome tree.
Would they do better at the edge of the parking lot and in the playground?
Yep. Yeah, they're a great urban tree.
They don't drop branches the way that cottonwood.
Right. Yep. Not to say that they don't ever need pruning. Like, this one looks pretty good, but I could see a couple dead branches up there. And that's what you would, your maintenance pruning would include is they call it crown clean, where you're removing all the dead and diseased branches. There's people that climb these trees to take care of that, but here you'd be able to put a bucket truck up to it. But you can see here we only have a small root zone. All of the roots are growing that way. There's probably very few roots underneath the road in the parking lot. And remember too that the roots, most of the roots are in that first 18 inches of soil. So yeah, people think that it's like a carrot and grows down, but it's not. They're just spread out as wide as the canopy because they want to be a little bit wider than a canopy, so they're getting that rainwater. The leaves aren't catching it. You'll see here this nice flare at the bottom. That's called the butt flare, and that's what you want to see. If I was to see it growing out of the ground from here up, I would know that the tree was buried and it's probably going to die soon. Because people think that they can just pile up soil and mulch against this area where you're going to create a habitat for funguses and insects and everything, and that's going to kill the tree.
If you're watering a tree, is it better to water further out rather than right next to the
Well,
tree?
you probably wouldn't water a tree this mature.
No, but I'm thinking of a smaller sized tree.
Yeah. There's also a lot of absorbing roots because the rainwater falls down the trunk of the tree too. So there's a lot of absorbing roots around here in addition to beyond the canopy.
Okay.
But mostly between here and beyond the canopy are those of the anchoring roots. Not the little fibrous ones that take up the water. Yeah, the roots under this area look more like the branches. Keep walking. This is a red maple. And if you step back, you can see someone's living in there. So In the woods, it's not a big deal if you have a hollow tree because it's going to fall and not bother anybody, right? The hollow is caused by some decay of some sort for whatever reason. Usually I can tell the story of why something decayed, but in this one I can't really tell. I can see that this had at one point okay, I can tell the story of this tree. Somebody tried to cut this down about, I don't know, 40 years ago, and it suckered back. Suckered means that from the stump, sprouts came up, and this is one of those sprouts. It had 2 other sprouts, but they must have passed away, and they have been cut down since. And you can see that those, look what I'm touching. Those have healed for the most part, other than you can see, okay, I think it healed, then another fungus came in and started decaying at the base. So, oh my goodness, I just heard it. Like I just hit it a little bit and I can hear the hollow in the tree. Like it's hollow all the way. So you know how a tree grows, you have the cambium right on the outside, just under the bark here. Well, that cambium is still solid, still passing nutrients and water up to the leaves, right, and the branches, but everything beyond that cambium, I can hear it when I knock on the tree. It's as hollow as can be.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So the only thing that's holding that tree up is about 1 inch of wood.
So, if you had speaking of sprouts, a tree that you lost and had to cut, and the species happens to be good at stump sprouts, but we have a really high deer population. Is there anything that is a deer deterrent to put on the sprout so those deer will stop eating my stump sprout so I can
Grow it back?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed. I'll just go ahead and say what it is, and I know it's a non-native, but I love it. It's a weeping willow, and I lost it in the ice storm, and I want another one. and-
Weeping willows get a pass. They're so similar to our native
Thank you for
willows.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went, and it's stump sprouts, but the deer
They're eating it.
decimate it. Is
Huh.
there anything that would deter them? Do you know?
Fencing it,
That's so
or if you're dedicated, spraying it with deer spray.
And what is in the deer spray? Is that?
Oh, disgusting, nasty stuff.
Okay.
With rotten eggs, you know.
Okay. And it really works.
Hot
I
pepper,
never know
cinnamon.
What's marketing and what's real.
Yeah, as long as it's not right under the window that you keep open.
It's at the edge of our property.
It just tastes terrible and keeps
Okay.
them away. Yeah. But you have to be vigilant about it
After it rains.
Yeah, after it rains, every 2 weeks or after it rains.
Okay.
So it's just a lot of work to do it that way if you're not into fencing it. But a weeping willow, you don't have to wait too long before it gets above the browse line.
It was beautiful. It was creating this outdoor room at the end of my property, and then that ice storm came, and that was the end. So I have to start over.
Well, weeping willows they're kind of like recycle tree. You know, they don't ever die.
No,
You might have a different stem every 50, 60 years, but it's not ever going to die. It's just going to keep coming back. So, yeah. I want to talk about the proper pruning cuts. It's funny you bring up weeping willows because they're exception to the rule. A proper pruning cut takes place at the collar of a branch. So if you, we don't have any good ones in here. Oh, this white oak. That first low branch. See where when it first comes out of the tree, how it's a little bit swollen? That's the collar. So you want to cut just past that collar. If you cut into the collar, it's less likely to heal the wound, and that's because there's different cells in that collar that help it heal. So you don't want to cut that off. And Alex Shigo was a botanist, my hero.
Yes.
That figured out that trees have the ability to compartmentalize decay. Have you ever had a cyst or something after you bumped yourself? It grows like a calcium layer around the injury, and you get a little bump under your skin, well, it's the same kind of thing. It calluses over the decay, or I mean the fungus, where it's being affected by the fungus. So that collar has those cells that invigorate it to overcome any decay that comes in after you make the wound, because anytime you prune a tree, you're making a wound, and a wound is a place for those fungal spores to get in. So it's very important to cut it at the collar, except weeping willows. Weeping willows, you could take your chainsaw and go and it doesn't care. It'll just sprout back out and be as beautiful as it was before.
I want to trim my maple tree. Is this a bad time of year to do it?
Well,
Cut some of
okay.
the branches off?
I'm glad you brought that up. The best time to do it is winter. The second best time to do it is now. The third best time, you got to be careful of this, because like I said, it takes a lot of energy to heal those wounds. So the summertime. The worst time to do it is in the spring, when everybody's out doing all their landscaping. Because the spring is the wet season. Wet season is the habitat for funguses, and you're just inviting them.
Okay.
And I was gonna add too, I remember Alex Chigo from years ago, and he was one of the ones that pointed out that the tree does heal quickly and compartmentalize. And all these companies, fly-by-night ones especially, that come in and tell you, well, we paint the wounds.
Oh,
and
no
stuff.
painting.
Right, and it's such a marketing sham, you know, that they try and promote that painting is necessary and stuff, and he said no.
Yeah. I have a little bottle of it's kind of like gray treatment. It's basically like rubbing dirt on a wound,
Right.
just in case you need to make the cuts more aesthetically pleasing, if you don't want people to see where the pruning cuts were. But it's totally non-toxic. You're not painting it with paint, or they used to use asphalt. They used to fill the hollows up with cement. And yeah,
Stop that nonsense.
yeah, none of that nonsense. Just you know, it either, like this one, if it was, you know, over the playground, that would be in the management plan for removal. But here, it's probably not going to bother anybody. It already fell apart a couple of times, and apparently didn't hurt anyone then, so it's probably okay. Huh. Yeah, that's what it seems like. Yeah, it seems like there's hornets would do that. Yeah. How big was that for you? Yeah, it's probably, maybe not the hornets, but another insect range. So should I remove the whole thing? Yeah. You can hear it. It's done here, so I would get like urgent. Well, oh, it just happened? It may or may, you know, it's kind of like, it could be a latent kind of your own gardener
I won't swear that I think it was weird that we used people's plants kind of in the bed that they left.
head on down the street.
And the black was particularly thorny, and I was looking at a tree that didn't have it. Let's just pretend they're there. They don't let them get close yet.
And then once that, it's like the
This
kids are always home.
also has a history. It's a black locust tree. It is native to the United States, but not native to the eastern United States. Now, it probably would have migrated naturally on its own to the eastern United States, but when we started homesteading in the Midwest, they realized how awesome the logs are for fence posts, and they started shipping them when the railroads first started. They started shipping fence posts to the east to be used as, by farmers for fence posts. And when you stick a black locust log in the ground, you have a black locust tree. It sprouts back. It doesn't, it takes forever for them to dry out to the point where if you were to stick it back in the ground, it wouldn't grow.
Just a log?
Just like a willow. You could just take a branch and stick it in the ground. That's what all the logs did, and that's why we have such a problem with black locust now.
Well, now don't they heat dry?
Invasive plant list that cannot be sold in nurseries anymore. It was an ornamental vine that you plant in your garden. It makes a nice ground cover too. And it escaped into the woods, and here we are. We're looking at it at Central Park in Schenectady.
What's the relationship with PRISM? Is that fall under DEC?
Yep.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
a good department
They're
within
partners,
them.
and they're funded, I believe, by the Forest Service too. And we are the DEC is the state conduit that then passes that funding on to the PRISM, which is the Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. I did it.
It's the U.S. Forest Service? Or the, okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
So every region has a PRISM, and the Capital Region's PRISM is awesome. It's run by Chris Williams out of the Cornell Cooperative Extension Office in Boston Spa. So that's a great.
And can I mention too that these wonderful speakers that we have, we always post them. If you can't be live on that Thursday on Zoom, you can always go to ECOS, to our website, ecosny.org, and listen to it, watch it later. And Addison, somebody with PRISM, was fascinating.
Chris is his boss.
Yeah. That was a great one to re-listen to.
So, Amy, any example like this tree here, see the left fork is dead up there?
Yeah.
Will the tree last longer just leaving it alone, or would it last, the rest of the tree last longer if somebody went up there and pruned that branch somehow?
Well, that tree in particular looks like it's having a lot of problems other than that one
Doesn't
dead
look
branch.
very good.
Well, I mean, it's more of a general question.
General question, yes. If you cut the dead wood away, you're definitely stopping the fungal invasion on that branch, right? If it's
But
gone.
you'd have to cut it back, you'd have to cut a live portion of the tree, right?
You're going to cut it to the collar at the, either
Okay.
it's going to be a collar that's at a branch union or the collar at the trunk itself.
Because sometimes you'll see a horizontal branch and everything beyond the collar is completely dead. You would cut it an inch from the collar?
At the collar, make a
Or
proper
right at the
pruning
collar.
cut at the collar, yep.
Even now, would you look, after you did that, would you look and you'd probably see more dead wood within the collar, or no?
Well, at that point, you don't care about if it had gone beyond the collar, because those cells in the collar will close up the
Encapsulated.
wound. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That's what we see a lot with utility companies. They want to clear the lines 15 feet. That's their job. That's what they were told to do.
My God, it's going to be 15 feet.
So they just take the chainsaw at 15 feet and go. Well, that wasn't anywhere near a collar, so those wounds end up decaying back to the point where, until they get to another collar. Collars generally happen at branch unions and at the trunk, and then you end up having a lot of dead wood up in the tree.
I didn't know that black locust wasn't native to the East Coast. Is that true for honey locust too?
Honey locusts? No, honey locusts are native. Now, we're talking about the real honey locusts.
Not the ones that are
With the thorns that are this long.
What
Yeah,
about
they're
what about the other type of honey locust? Are they native?
They're not. Well, they're Frankenstein's,
Yeah.
I believe. They were created by a grower to be thornless. red oak trees. So you see how they have the pointy lobes on the leaves? And that's how you tell a red oak from a white oak apart. And I gotta say, this particular species of red oak is an actual red oak, Quercus rubrum or whatever they're called. But within each group, red oak and white oak, they have so similar characteristics. Maybe you don't even need to tell the species apart from each other. That's totally an individual decision. Like some different species, they turn different colors and things. Like we'll see a scarlet oak on our way out, and that's going to be awesome when it turns color. But these aren't bad. Yeah, red oak, again, furniture, flooring, that type of thing that the wood is good for. Acorns for all the wildlife and habitat for the wildlife, but it's just very important to remember the different, trivia game. The difference between red oak and the white oak, the pointy lobes versus the rounded lobes. Oh. Yeah, what's this one? Oh, pin oak.
I think it's pin oak, lustrous.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is a red oak. You see what I mean? So pin oaks are really cool. You know, I said just as I got done saying that all red oaks have the same characteristics of things, but pin oaks are different because you can see it's kind of growing like a conifer. It has that main stem, and then the leaves or branches are coming off from it after. It has that triangle shape. So growing next to power lines, you can sometimes get away with it. If you have it closer to the power line than you would normally put, you definitely want to put a maple tree perhaps, this far away from a power line because it will grow up into the lines. But a pin oak you can get away with a lot of times because they grow about 60, 70 feet tall, and they have that shape like this, so it's likely to stay away from the lines and not have to get butchered.
Looking for acorns, I guess we have really ravenous squirrels.
We'll take that right here.
Thank you.
This is the problem with walkers, they can escape.
Don't have to go back and get a car or anything. Nice to meet you, Amy, and I'll watch you on Zoom in a couple of weeks. No, I won't watch you, I'll watch your friend.
Yeah, Christina.
See how deep
Between
Well,
them.
thank you very much for what you've done. It's very interesting.
Spindly looking leaves.
It's always fun to look. Yeah.
squirrels are just
So this is a cool tree over here. This is a cool tree over here. Does anyone know what this tree is?
Sycamore.
Sycamore? I believe it's a London plane.
I would believe you.
to me they look the same.
A London plane tree is a cross between an American sycamore and a plane tree from Europe. And usually when you see something that looks like a sycamore in a nursery, it's not a sycamore, it's a London plane. Or if you see one that's planted rather than just growing in the woods on its own, it's probably a London plane.
How do you spell plane?
Plane. They're generally a sycamore you'll find growing in wet areas. I think there are some over there. But a London plane tree, the plane trees, they grow on the plains, and they're more adapted to drier areas. They make great street trees. If you drive down 5th Avenue alongside Central Park in New York City, I mean, they're huge. They were planted when Central Park was put in the 1800s. Huge trees. They're very well taken care of. They're just awesome with the winter interest because of the bark, all the different modeling of colors in the bark. The giant leaves, I just love them. If you cut one down, don't volunteer to help carry the logs because they're full of water and they're very, very heavy. So heavy. I spent, I don't know, 10 years working for a tree company and had to take down a couple of these, and yeah, it's tough.
So the plane trees that sycamores were hybridized are native to Europe, like all over? Okay,
Yep,
interesting.
yep. When I was picking up one of these logs to load it into the back of a truck one time, the homeowner came out and said, "Honey, why didn't you learn how to type?"
Oh, I love that line.
I just don't have the dexterity for it. What else was I going to show you over here? Now, we're in a landscaped area. Everything over here was planted, right? We're not looking at any woodland trees. You can see that the progression of the managers of the park, their species selection throughout the years has improved greatly. There's no Norway maples. I see one. Well, let's walk down to that elm because Steve wanted to talk about elms.
Oh, I know. So it's dangerous.
My eyes deceive me from far away. Does anyone know what this is? Oh, it is an elm. Never mind.
Is it?
Look at the branching on it, though. It's opposite branching. Up. It's an ash.
It's an ash.
Yeah.
Look at these leaves. It's definitely an ash.
Yeah.
But look, what's going on here? I gotta figure out this mystery.
It needs a hide.
This is a.
Has the
It
opposite
must be
branching.
a green ash. Oh look. Oh my goodness. Look at all the different leaves growing on this crazy thing.
Oh my.
So we found a mutant. This is a green ash that is affected by the emerald ash borer, which was an insect that was accidentally brought over from China in dunnage. That's untreated wood that's used as crating material for well, in this case it was odd-sized auto parts that were shipped to Detroit to make a car, and you know, each crate is custom made for the part it's holding, and they don't bother treating the wood because that's expensive, and the insect came over with it.
When did that happen about?
2000.
Oh, that way, okay. Wow,
So-
that worked fast.
Yeah, that worked fast. So, and it didn't get caught for a while because Detroit is, a lot of places in Detroit, if you don't know, are ghost town because the auto industry is drying up. Well, they were having a conference. It was an urban forestry type of meeting, and they were talking about different trees, but ash trees weren't on the agenda until they went down this boulevard where ash trees were planted in the middle, and they were all dead. So you got a bunch of arborists that get out of the cars and they're like, "What's going on here?" And they found little small D-shaped exit holes from a beetle. So what's happening is that beetle came in, escaped out into the wild in Detroit. It gets into the tree, and in that cambial layer where all the water and nutrients are transported from the ground, it eats galleries through there. So it's effectively girdling the tree. Now there's probably 1,000 of those larvae in this tree right now. So what it did was it's killing it from the top down. Say the larvae started up there, they girdled an area, and they're moving down, and the tree is like, my head's cut off, so it started sprouting out, So there's all kinds of water sprouts, and I can't explain why there are mutant leaves on this tree.
Well, according to my cheat sheet, the ash leaves are not supposed to be very toothed. Yet some of these
Yes.
are very toothed.
That's why I handed you a leaf.
According to the European ash has toothed leaves.
Okay, so let's
and
call
they're
this
round,
a European leaf.
And they're round. So maybe this is some sort of hybrid between them.
I don't know.
I bet they planted the European ash, you know, the park planted them.
Yeah, that's possible. In landscape trees, you don't know where they're coming from.
But they're not very round.
Except,
Occasionally.
except on the end here. So yeah, it's not
Interesting.
normal for an ash tree to have different shaped leaves.
And then the borer affects only the genus of ashes, right? Whether it's white ash, European.
Yeah,
but
I don't-
nothing outside.
I
of
don't
it?
think it's escaped into different genuses.
I wonder what it is about. You know,
Yeah.
because it's in the Cambium. I wonder how it
Yeah.
can be so specific to that species. It's amazing.
That's what it's adapted to eat in China, and that's what it's going to
But
eat
it
here.
eats all ashes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not picky.
So
And is a former ash.
That's a former ash as well. That was taken by emerald ash borers.
I don't usually go by bark, but I was standing right behind my neighbor. That looks a lot like it.
Yeah, ashes to me, I find them easier to identify in the winter because they are opposite branched.
Yeah.
But when you have a branch meeting the main branch, you have a branch coming out the other side. So that's what I mean by opposite. And the branches are kind of stout. You know, even the branchlets, you know, they're sturdy looking. Not so much anymore in this particular specimen. So yeah, this will have to be taken down.
So tell us about this one.
That
That I think is a Linden. But well, I won't say. I'm not sure. I think it is.
Yeah, this is a lovely little landscape tree. Yep, little leaf linden is in the basswood family. So basswood is, eastern basswood is a native tree, and a grower, I think that these came from that native tree. A grower did what growers do and manipulated the specimens that they were growing to come up with the characteristics of smaller leaves, the branch structure. This isn't an awesome specimen, but the branch structure, it generally has pretty tight branch crotches. You know, the branches come out pretty, you know, acutely angled to the tree, which keeps them up out of the way for, you know, on street trees. It keeps them up out of the way of the road. Yeah, they're tough little trees. Basswood wood is used for a lot, like duck decoy carving. It's very easily carved into shape, and that's what it's used for a lot.
Don't they use it for guitars too? I think I read that.
I don't know.
Basswood.
I thought like tool handles, so it makes sense that it would be for, like maybe it's just the handle of the guitar and not
It
the,
would be fun to pass
There was something about
around.
oh maybe.
What's that?
Yeah, I've
Some
never
sort of
heard that
insect,
one.
I guess.
Yeah, ask her about
And then this one, it kind of looks like a bass or a little leaf linden. It doesn't.
totally.
Cool.
And this doesn't look anything
Insect
like you
attack.
usually see it
Oh, yeah.
on main
Look at those.
streets all across America. This is a Bradford calorie pear that is growing in the woods for some reason. So I'm not sure what the managers of Central Park were thinking when they put this here. First of all, it's a tree that needs a lot of light. It's a tree that we've known has been an invasive species for at least 30 something years now. It cannot be sold in New York anymore because it's so invasive. Or I might have got that wrong. It might be on my wish list for trees that shouldn't be sold in New York anymore. Yeah, and just remember, this doesn't look anything like what you're used to seeing. In the springtime, they're the first ones to flower with the white flowers. And I'm talking every main street in America. They look like big cotton candy balls, or popcorn balls, I guess, with the white flowers. So yeah, this isn't the best place for it. There's not enough light for it, and I'm kind of
Losing
glad because
wind.
now it won't seed as much as it would.
Sarah pointed out these.
Oh,
Which is
yeah,
that?
just an insect
Yeah.
doing what insects do.
What?
Bradford pear.
Making a little habitat for its seeds.
Street trees are
That's
And I don't know
Dr.
what
Plaza
which
is
insect it is.
Bradford.
We're just providing habitat everywhere.
And the name of this tree that you're pointing out is
That-
this one.
That's the Bradford calorie pear.
Oh, Bradford pear.
Yep.
Yes. I remember when they came out and they were lining the people's
Yeah.
walkways and stuff.
Yeah.
I never liked them.
Have you ever heard of Davy Tree Company?
Sure.
They have a program that they'll, if you pay them to cut down your calorie pears, they'll replant a different native flowering tree for you
Oh.
at no cost.
To cut it down, I was thinking. There's a weeper over there.
At Bradford pear. This is winter.
Oh,
This is doing well now. When I was doing the kids programs, it was not very happy.
yeah. They get subjected to. There's a lot of insects. I like to eat them too, not just Sarah's deer. A weeping willow. They were brought over from Asia a very, very long time ago, but they're so genetically similar to our native willows that it's like, sure, let's throw another one into the mix. So when that happens, we call them naturalized. Even if they do have invasive type properties where they, just start taking off everywhere, we wouldn't call them alien invasives because they're so similar to our native willows that it's kind of okay. We're okay with it. The ecologists are okay with it. This maple is having a tough time.
Yeah.
All of these bumps on its trunk are cankers that are caused by a fungus. So it also has,
Look at the leaves.
yeah, look at the leaves, how they're,
Kind
I-
of pretty, but.
yeah, they're kind of losing their color, and that's just the effects of the fungus on them.
I don't know if you want to talk about it, but there was a huge patch of the Japanese knotweed over there, and they actually dug a huge hole to get it out.
But what did they do with the, and when they put that on the dump truck, where did they take
Yes,
it?
exactly. I don't know. Oh, I see. It's not cut. It fell down.
So this is probably a white pine that was planted here. Not a great spot for a white pine because it's right on the edge of a stream, right? Pines like to live on uplands in sunny areas, and it just got to the point, you can see I got it pretty big. It just got to the point where it's like, all right, that's enough with the wet feet. I don't want wet feet, and I'm not going to live through this anymore. And there it goes, it died. We have to take it down.
So this is another London plane, you think?
Yep.
I've always telling the kids that it's a sycamore.
You're only half long. They are resistant to sycamore anthracnose that our American sycamores get every spring. They just totally drop all their leaves. They end up getting what they call witch's brooms, is because it's kind of like the fungus causes kind of like a cancer, a mutation in the cells that it makes the branches sprout. So they have a lot of weird little branches coming out of their branches. And they're called witch's brooms. and the London plane is resistant to that. So you-
Here we have the Japanese knotweed coming back after a monumental attempt at eradication.
Yeah, like I said, the only effective way, nobody likes to use herbicide, but some things we have to.
Yeah.
And
It's
if
like
they're-
kudzu in the south.
yeah, if it's used properly and you follow the label directions and you're not just, randomly, it's called integrated pest management, where you think of all the options you have to take care of what you need to take care of, and you use the option that's effective but has the least environmental impact. So to keep insects out of your house, you don't just go in your house and spray all kinds of repellent, you put screens on your window, right? So it's just thinking common sense that way. That's kind of the argument against herbicides, is that they were just used too freely. And I personally think we're overcorrecting about using the herbicides, but if they're used smart, you follow the directions, you heed you took in all of the ways you could have done it. You could, maybe sometimes digging it up is the right answer, or cutting it and maybe just treating the stumps. In that case, you're only using a few teaspoons of herbicide rather than spraying a big bunch of bushes. So it's just trying to minimize. That's an elm of some sort.
We had a couple of ones. Where I grew up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they go together. Yeah, we didn't talk about bittersweet vines, but all those dead vines hanging off that tree are oriental bittersweet vines. And they were brought in also from Asia to be an ornamental plant. That went wrong. And they're everywhere. They are pretty. You can even see on the dead vines, they have the red berries with the very bright yellow coating. Like, not coating, it's like a sheath. And so they're very ornamental. But if someone brought it into my house in a bouquet, I would throw it. I wouldn't throw it out. I'd throw it in the garbage in the compost box. But yeah, they're very, very detrimental. And nothing is more satisfying than getting a hold of a big old bittersweet root and pulling it out by the roots and getting them all. And that is an effective way to get rid of bittersweet, other than the seed bank that's already there.
This is the ash I used to show them and tell them it wouldn't be here for long.
Yeah, here we are. Again, you can see the sprouting coming from the bottom. It lost its head and it's trying to live, so it's sprouting again.
This used to be a wonderful thread showing the kids the trees, there were little ones along the way, and then they came and they cut them all down.
Very recently too, right?
Fairly recent.
Yeah.
5 years.
Oh, is it?
Forget me not remembering the show.
I admire that.
Yeah.
There were trees, and the last time I was here to do the recon for this, because I was going to show everybody there was an interesting native but not normal, kind of rare cherry tree. Yeah, there's a pin cherry growing over there. Also, where a pin cherry shouldn't grow. They like upland, and it was growing in a stream bed.
Steve, what were you aiming back in the parking lot talking about Vale Cemetery? There's a project there you're trying to...
I hadn't heard of. Well, they got themselves declared an official arboretum, and they're saying that they got some money for somebody to go, for a company to go in and catalog all the trees and
Honeysuckle?
I didn't know that.
Honey locust. Honey locust.
Yeah, there's a honey.
Honey locust. Well, it's a thornless honey locust. Great street trees. Yeah, I mean, if you can't get a tree to grow in whatever site you have, just get yourself a honey locust. It'll grow.
So they They seem to lose branches. A lot of the branches die off in these.
The honey look, they die. They don't really lose them. They just kind of hang on to
Right.
them.
Is there any way to fertilize them or do something that so
It's
they
a
won't do
matter
that
of-
so often?
It's a matter of senescence. The upper
Shedding.
part of the tree ends up shading out the lower branches and they die.
Okay.
And the reason you notice them is because they hang on to them.
Yeah.
And they're not that fun to prune either.
Just,
Oh, there's another naturalized tree, a Norway spruce. And they're here. That's the Rockefeller Christmas tree every year. And we don't mind them being here. Maybe don't plant plantations anymore, but when they pop up, that's fine. They're sturdy, they don't blow over in the wind.
Are they having an issue with the adulthood? What is the pasture?
Hemlock woolly adelgid?
Is that also affecting only hemlock, or is that also affecting spruce and?
No,
These
hemlock woolly
spruces
adelgid's only affecting the hemlocks and basically wiping them out. Where I come from in Dutchess County, we don't even have hemlocks anymore. They just detected the woolly adelgid, yeah, in Lake George, so that's not good. And that's being actively treated and eradicated. We're not going to let that happen.
You know where Poquet is? Mm-hmm.
For this project, for this walk, this was very obviously freshly torn up for construction. I imagine they just installed those swings recently, or they were doing something over here. But when you do have construction activity so close to very mature trees, and you're messing with the its roots have been there for however many years, you can't just walk in and start messing with them. So they had probably ended up doing a lot of root damage, at least on this side of the tree. I can see evidence that they banked soil up against this area because we were just looking at it's going straight down like as if it was a straw into the soil, you know, it's just straight up and down there. Now they didn't do too bad, I can see some flare, but you got to remember you can't change the grade of the root zone of a tree more than 3 inches a year. You got to give it time to get used to that. And I think they piled up a little more than 3 inches here. The tree roots need air and water, and just like the top does. So it's a matter of, you know, and when what kind of soil was it? Was it easily compacted? Was it, you know, I always feel bad just standing on a root zone because I'm compacting the soil, you know, riding the lawn tractors over it and that type of thing. You're just causing soil compaction and getting rid of those little air pockets in the soil that the roots need.
This is a white oak.
This is a big white oak. And I can already see that it's got some dieback. I don't know if it was from this project or if it was already in, you know, having issues before that, but this definitely didn't help it. So just when you have a construction project, either plan to protect the root zone or just remove the tree, because you're not doing the person that's going to be removing the tree any favors by waiting for it to get decayed to the point where it's dangerous for them too. Probably more common, yeah. Yeah, white oak needs more sun, and kind of like bottomland. So the fact that you're not going to do tree harvest in wetlands so much harder to come by. There might be as many in the world as red oaks, but they're just harder to harvest. And good for wine barrels. We'll start walking back to the cars, and there's a couple trees along the way I want to show you.
There are pitch pines up by the road. If you want to show them those. Those maybe pitches over there, are they?
Where? Oh. What are you pointing to?
Oh, did I? Pitch pines.
Yeah. Those are white pines for sure.
They are.
Oh, I see.
But we do have pitch pine up by the road. Just in case that's an issue.
Yeah.
I'm gonna head back to my car this day, so thanks, really interesting.
Thank you. I like the fact that they put wood chips on the ground here because that helps displace all of the little pitter patter of feet that are going through here on the root zones, because it helps spread out the impact from their little steps. Well, that's another good reason to have mulch, other than, you know, collect or hang on to soil moisture. It keeps the weeds down. It eventually decays and becomes compost for the root zone. Conditioning the soil.
Should that whistle?
You look on the top of that white oak, you start seeing dye back there. I called that flagging before when we were talking about elm trees. That is indicative of root damage, which isn't surprising where it is. It's totally compacted. It has the parking lot on the one side within the root zone, and yeah, they're not doing the roots any favors here.
And they have to point out the Sikh Center, the Sikh
Oh, yeah.
Center to be right across the road from us here. Will be a center for ECOS and the Schoharie River Center, their Schenectady base, and community fathers.
Schenectady.
Colors.
Betsy Henry, I came here for a tour with Betsy Henry when I first started.